Unaccompanied migrant children are being abused by the most repulsive sickos, and worse yet, these are the same creeps Uncle Sam is paying to keep these kids safe. Welcome to America Uncovered, I'm Chris Chappell. Let's start off with a mental health break. You know something's wrong when America Uncovered starts off this way. It's never gonna be, let's take a mental health break. Also, ice cream is free now and no longer causes cavities. That's our show, thanks for watching. Now the disturbing part. The US Justice Department is suing a group that houses unaccompanied migrant children, alleging it allowed severe sexual abuse to take place. Prosecutors said the government has cataloged more than 100 reports of sexual abuse or harassment since 2015. And in an awful twist of fate, the provider in question, Southwest Key Programs, Inc., is no minor nonprofit, it's the largest shelter operator of its kind. According to the lawsuit, from at least 2015 through at least 2023, multiple Southwest Key employees have subjected unaccompanied children in their care to repeated and unwelcome sexual abuse, harassment, and misconduct in a hostile housing environment, including severe sexual abuse and rape, solicitation of sex acts, solicitation of nude photos, entreaties for sexually inappropriate relationships, sexual comments, and gestures leering and inappropriate touching. Let me emphasize that we're talking about unaccompanied migrant children, both boys and girls as young as 5. Let me repeat that. 5 years old. Away from family and loved ones, all alone, and likely not able to speak the language. Allegedly, Southwest Key employees, including supervisors and clinicians, have been exploiting their desperate situation. And according to its own website, minors typically stay at Southwest Key shelters for up to 32 days. 32 days. Potentially 32 days of pure hell. Unaccompanied migrant children trapped with their abusers, powerless and miles from home. To make matters worse, according to the complaint, many of these employees have threatened children with silence, saying things along the lines of how they would kill their families or hospitalize them. There's also at least one case where an employee threatened a child with delaying her reunion with family or placement with a sponsor. Are they not doing background checks on these employees? Who's in charge of HR? Kevin Spacey? I'll save you from some of the more unsavory details, but to sum it up, it's just as bad as you can imagine. And to save your imagination from wandering too far, here's another mental health break. Wasn't enough, now I'm wondering if these people looking after these puppies are also monsters. The Justice Department says Southwest Key knew that this kind of thing was happening, yet failed to take appropriate action to protect the children in its care. Keep in mind, these aren't some randos hired through Craigslist. This is a major contractor for the US government. In other words, children under US government custody are being sexually abused by those who are supposed to take care of them. Both migrant children testimonies and video footage corroborate accusations against the Southwest Key employees. A Southwest Key spokeswoman disputed the Justice Department's complaint. According to her, it does not present the accurate picture of the care and commitment our employees provide to the youth and children. Is her defense basically, okay, but what about the kids we didn't abuse? Not sure that's really the picture Southwest Key wants, given that it hid its X account for some reason. If only those children were as protected as their tweets. But according to its website, Southwest Key identifies itself as an integral partner in the US response to the immigration crisis. That's not the first red flag. Never trust someone who cites themselves when giving their credentials. That's like reading quotes on the back of the book that says, "This is the greatest and best story I've ever read," signed the author. Southwest Key currently operates a total of 29 shelters across Texas, Arizona, and California. Altogether, they can accommodate more than 6,000 unaccompanied children. And guess who largely funds this house of terror? None other than the US government. Between fiscal years 2015 and 2023, Southwest Key received over $3 billion in funding from HHS. Without a doubt, it's part of what one might call the border industrial complex. According to the Free Press, Southwest Key Programs' CEO made more than $1 million in 2022. You can learn more about that in this episode. I'll put a link below. Funny how nonprofits are so profitable. Did I say funny? I meant alarmingly suspicious, and it's well past time someone looks into it and holds someone accountable. Silly mistake. And unfortunately, this has been a problem for some time. Unaccompanied migrant child abuse was going on long before U.S. President Joe Biden took office, and will likely still be a problem after he leaves office in January. Glad to see he decided to drop out before he fell out. As if that weren't bad enough, it's not just nonprofit contractor vultures that have some soul searching to do. Uncle Sam, clearly running on empty in the morality department, needs to figure out how to conjure up a conscience. The Office of Refugee Resettlement, or ORR, is the federal agency in charge of transferring unaccompanied children, which means they're complicit in perpetuating migrant child abuse. Despite being the one that tells private care providers how to prevent, detect, and respond to sexual abuse and harassment of children in their care, the ORR guards children's innocence like Cruella de Vil runs a puppy daycare. You'd think people working in the border industry would be better at not crossing boundaries. One possible reason is that during the massive migrant crisis in 2021, it seems the Biden administration prioritized processing children in and out of shelters above safety. Certainly a good role model for Southwest Key programs. As a result, the ORR lost contact with nearly 20,000 unaccompanied children within just 10 months of 2021 alone. Case managers, meanwhile, performed home studies in less than 5% of placements. In fact, criminal history, lack of citizenship status, and even total refusal to submit to background checks didn't disqualify sponsors from receiving unaccompanied children. That would disqualify you from receiving a gun, but not a child? The ORR doesn't even consider criminal background, current illegal drug use, the physical environment of the home, or other child welfare concerns as necessarily disqualifying to potential sponsorship. The ORR also abandoned mandatory DNA testing, making it harder to verify that the adults claiming to be family really are who they say they are. Because it's not like human traffickers who'd want to harm a child would do something as despicable as lying on a government form. On top of that, the ORR discouraged close investigations of addresses, including those that turned out to be for a strip club, empty lots, and open fields. And what exactly in the world would make the government do something so obviously stupid? Well, U.S. officials said at the time they wanted to avoid having kids in cages. But to do that, the government repeatedly overrode the concerns of lower-level workers who warned about placing them in certain households. Sadly, they'd be much safer in cages because it keeps those human sharks away from them. Turns out that caseworkers were told to discharge children within 10 to 14 days. And according to the Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, which oversees the ORR, 16% of records for children who were released to sponsors in March and April 2021 lacked evidence that required safety checks were conducted. Even according to the New York Times, by February 2023, HHS couldn't reach more than 85,000 children. Doesn't take much imagination to think what even a fraction of these kids might face. Mainly because we have hard evidence, so you don't really have to imagine it. Especially when you see cases like when a lone teenage girl was sent to a male sponsor with multiple other unknown males living in the same residence. Best case scenario, the economy is so bad, adults need multiple roommates to make rent. And that's still sad, but in a different way. All I can say is, here's to puppies. Just try not to think about how the people adopting them go through more of a background check than the people hosting migrant children. If you like America Uncovered's nonpartisan take on news and politics, be sure to subscribe, smash that like button, and support the show on Patreon. Please contribute $1 an episode to make this show happen. Click that orange button. And here's a video I want to show you. YouTube thinks you'll like it, and every time you watch another video, you're also supporting this channel. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.